everybody, and welcome to today's Mike Ames Show. I am joined by the marvelous Dad Mike today, who I will be referring to as Dad or Father for the proceedings. Isn't that right, Daddy?
Sure is. I was Camo Mike earlier, but we changed it to Dad Mike.
Right. We did. And the reason that he's Dad Mike is because our special guest today is also called Mike, and that is Mike Pagan. Welcome today, Mike.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a joy to have you here.
It is an absolute pleasure. I wanted Mike on the show because, in fact, before we came on air, we were trying to work out how long we'd known each other. We think about 15 years, there or thereabouts, a long time anyway, and a lot of mutual respect between us. Done a lot of stuff, on and off over the years. But because of that connection, I read. Oh, there it is. There you go. Mike's latest book, Mental Wealth, which is a good book, but there's one thing in there which really struck a chord for me as part of that mental wealth thing. It's this concept of a support team. And the two reasons I wanted to talk about it on the show. The first reason is that everybody has one to a greater or lesser extent, I think. But the second reason is it the right support team? And the book was really quite specific on that. And I thought there's a lot of solopreneurs that watch this show or micro businesses, and many of them probably would do a whole lot better and have better mental health if they had a really good support team around them. So Mike's come to talk about that today with us, Mike. Very excited, by the way.
Yes, perfect. So I sort of want to get in, and we're definitely going to talk in a minute about how we build that team and how we get started with it. But just before we start, Mike, I want to ask you a question, and that is, what is mental wealth? Because I think a lot of people confuse it with mental health, and I just want clarification on it. What would you describe as mental wealth?
The simple process is, clearly it's a play on the terminology of mental health. But for starting, Mark, I'm not a mental health expert. I'm not a counsellor. My world is all about mental wealth, which is to focus on building that support team around you that's fit for purpose for the way forward. So we've all got loads of people, in theory, in our social media, in our world, in our Rolodex, just making it relevant for Dad Mike so he understands what I'm talking about here.
I've got a Rolodex, by the way. I have a Rolodex.
Yeah, I'm sure. But these people, they're not all relevant, and they're not all got our back. They're just acquaintances. They're friendships from sport or the school gate or whatever it is. And we need to have people that have truly got our back. Because the killer part of this is isolation kills creativity and prevents decision making. It's a phrase I use a lot. And one of the negative effects of not making decisions is we then procrastinate or we faff about. And I mean, in America, there are states that naturally have procrastination down as an illness nowadays because it causes anxiety and stress.
Don't they say that procrastination is the natural assassin of opportunity? I've read that. It's not one of mine, but I've read that somewhere, and I think it's bang on, isn't it? Really.
But this is the problem. So when we are isolated, there's a reason why prisons put people in solitary confinement. Yeah, it's a punishment. Yeah, it's to stop you mingling. It's to stop you interacting. It's to stop you bouncing ideas. Now, I appreciate there are times where we need to work alone. But there's a difference between working alone and being isolated. And I know, Mike, you used a phrase earlier when we were chatting, so commercial loneliness.
Yeah.
This is what we're talking about. You can be at the top of a tree, 5 employees, 5,000 employees, whatever it happens to be, and people aren't there. So it's understanding who's in your network and how that is, and then we can build the right ones. Because the negative side of this, and this is where it does flirt into the mental health, or what directly goes into mental health, is when we are isolated and we haven't got the right support network around us, that is when the gremlins come in and the monsters grow. And there are far too many cases of mental health issues out there nowadays, and there's so much work that needs to be done. And I believe that having the right support network around us can make that less likely. It's not going to remove it, but it's going to help. And I mean, I personally, in the last month alone, I've been touched by 3 cases. And it just, it's just frightening. We've got so much work to be done.
Because that is such an important point. and that's the thing that struck me when I read the book, and why I wanted you to come on the show, is that, like I said, we're all surrounded by people. I mean, unless you're Billy No Mates, maybe a Baggies fan or something, that would probably do it. But if everyone's surrounded by people, and if you're in a business, you've got perhaps your staff, or you've got your friends and family. But there's a difference between having people around you and having people in that inner circle that totally get what's going on. And when you say, and again, you talk about this in the book, have your back. That's not to say if they haven't got your back, they're against you. It's just they're neither one thing or the other, really. That you want people who are proactively working with you to help you achieve what it is that you want to achieve. And the thing I liked about it is there's an implication of it's going to cost a lot of money. No, it can be free. And that's absolutely free. We'll talk about this a little later, I know, but getting through commercial loneliness not only improves your mental health, which it does, but I think it makes you more successful. I'm convinced of it. And I don't know about you, Mike, but I've always had people around me that subconsciously, I would imagine, and are not as structured as you would do it, but always had people around me to support and help and guide. And I don't think I've got a coach who I pay, but other than that, I think everybody else, I've just collected them for free.
And and these people ebb and flow. I mean, there are times when they are relevant, and there's times when you outgrow them, because we all transition throughout our lives, from school to college to university or apprenticeship, first job, first house, all these firsts we do. And as you transition, the people that you need around you change. There are some that will be lifers that will stay with you all the way, understandable. But it's knowing. I did some brilliant work in the last few years with professional elite sportsmen and women transitioning to their life after sport. And the guillotine comes down at the point of retirement for an athlete in whatever form. They had 35 people keeping them on the pitch yesterday, but today that guillotine's that none of them are fit for purpose now, or maybe two of them. And so they really struggled with isolation and loneliness as to who they're going on. It's the same coming out of the military. All of these things where people transition from one space to the next, we need to then help build the right support network that's fit for purpose going forward.
The reason I'm interrupting is that is fascinating, and I find that lack of permanence. So many people think something is now and will forever be, and I find that really interesting. But I really want to get into sort of the practicalities of this, about how you can actually discover how to get these people. And we talked earlier, and we got this broken down into 3 different sort of steps. You go into more detail in the book, but we've sort of simplified it for today. So the first step that we spoke about is about auditing your current support network. So how would you go about doing that? What does that mean?
The word audit makes it sound really sort of financial and really good. This is totally subjective. No science attached to this. What I would ask people to do is to get a piece of paper, but just a fresh page on their laptop, whatever it is, and just write down the list of all the people in their connected network that they have at the moment.
And is this personal and professional, or just professional?
No, it is personal and professional, because this is our mental wealth. This is our whole being. Yeah. Okay. So, and then it's asking those questions about sort of who's there, and don't try and sort of just go through everybody you've met in Facebook and LinkedIn or whatever else it is, because you'll have hundreds and thousands. Just make a small list. Some people will come up with 5, some will come up with 45. Mm-hmm. Then the challenge is to score them, and we score them 1 to 10. Hence, I say totally subjective. And don't give somebody a high score just because you think they deserve it. They're a high score because they have really got your back. And what we then do is you'll then look back at the numbers on what we score. If they get a 1, 2, or a 3, they're an acquaintance. That's it. That's not a bad thing. They could develop into something further down the track, but currently they're an acquaintance. Mm-hmm. If you're scoring 4s and 5s, then there's a reason why you're mixing with them. It could be to do with your sport, your school gate, your work colleague, whatever it is. But if you weren't available or weren't around for 2 months because you injured your shoulder and couldn't play or whatever it was, they wouldn't pick up the phone and ring you. But when you come back, they say, "Oh, great to see you again, Mike. How you been? Oh, I didn't know about your shoulder. Sorry." So they know you. You've then got your 6s and 7s. Now, these can be great friends. They can be your best friends even. You go to christenings, birthdays, weddings, whatever else. You have fun with them. What you don't do with them, though, is we're not open, transparent, and naked in our in our fears, our concerns, and our opportunities with them. So they go so far, so that they're not deep, they're skin deep.
Yeah.
And then the other ones are your 8, 9s, and 10s. And these are the people who've truly got your back. And you know full well when the proverbial hits the fan, they'll step in. You've got people around you, and these ones really work. And for some of you doing that, you're going to find 1 or 2 names. That's all. Others, if you've got 15 or 20 names all scoring 8, 9s, and 10s, I challenge the fact you've probably been a little generous in your scoring.
That's interesting. That works. Can we just dig in on that one a little bit? So okay, so if I'm doing this right, okay, I know loads of people because I'm old, basically. That could be old Dad Mike, couldn't it? I suppose.
Yes, I think that it's implied.
Anyway, so I know loads of people. So say, for example, I've got some clients been dealt with for some years, and I just do business with them. I support them. I ring them up. We have a chat and everything. But they're going to be that second group, aren't they? Really, I guess.
Yeah.
And that they're the people that they work with me when they work with me. When they don't, they don't. And I probably don't occur to them, and I probably wouldn't call upon them if I was in trouble. I've got some people who I play golf with. Actually, you've got 2 groups of those, funnily enough. I've got some people who I play golf with, and I would class them as probably well up the list. But others, we just have a bit of a crack. It's a hoot. We have a drink, and then that's it, really. So those are that kind of people. The third group is kind of interesting, isn't it, really? Because, you know, there's quite a few in that group. Oh, I mean, people like Kirsty, would they be in that group or the top group? I don't know, really. It's hard to say.
Better be in your top group.
Difficult to differentiate.
Well, I'm going to come in on that one specifically because the blood thing is the challenge, because people think, well, because there's blood, I've got to be there. And they've got to. In my sister's support network, if she was to ever do that, I would score a 12 out of 10. Yep, because there's a big reliance and support and everything that goes there. In my support network, in my mental wealth team, as I call it, she'd only score a 7.
Interesting.
Yep. Now that's not because there's a personal problem, whatever else. It's just when it comes to certain the way I work, the way I do business, the way I'm driving forward, it doesn't compute. And so it's that understanding of where that difference is. We don't have to feel obliged to put somebody in our team just because we've known them for so long, or they are family, or whatever else. It's who's really going to help you going forward.
Can I ask a question about this then? Because
last question, then we're going to move on, Mike.
Okay, yeah, but this is quite an important thing. So I think if people are doing this, I could imagine just me thinking about doing it, I could probably get yourself into a bit of a hole on this one. We run a course for accountants to teach them how to build networks, and we do this for them. We audit the network, not to do with their mental wealth. It's to do with what's the point of this person in your network, and make money out of them, help them, whatever it is, right? And we encourage them, once they've drawn it up, then to share that list or go through that list with someone else and explain why each of those people are there in the way that they are. Do you think once you've drawn up your list, it would be a good idea to take someone who's a 7, 8 or 9, 8, 9, 10 and go through that list with them and say, let me go through what I think's in my mental health team?
Absolutely no harm in doing that, because these are people that you're entrusting. So they're there. They've got your back. That you want them to be naked and transparent. And I keep using the word naked, but that's only because it's when we're truly open and vulnerable, people can ask better questions. Yeah, if we're wearing that mask, we're wearing that guard, we're just sort of, we're giving the big extrovert personality. I'm there, I'm wonderful, but actually the underbelly is completely soft and vulnerable. If we've got those facades up there, then we're not being true to the people.
Well, Alan Kenny, our friend Alan Kenny, said that vulnerability is a superpower, and he's absolutely right, isn't he? Okay, so it might be a good idea. I know Kirsty's keen to press on. It might be a good idea just to sense check what you've got and get someone to push back and say, "Are you sure they're in your net?" Yeah. Okay.
Sense checking is so important throughout everything here.
Okay, perfect. So we've gone through and we've audited. We've gone through whether it's 5 or 50 people, and we've gone through and we've rated them. How do we then decide who to take forward into our support network? Because I'm guessing there's a sort of obvious thing, which is the high level ones should be there. but do you take anybody else? Who do you decide to go with you?
It depends on where you're trying to get. And I know that's always the irritating answer. It depends. I always focus on sort of four core areas, which we'll lead into in more in a moment. But when we're talking about self-care, we're talking about having a coach, talking about the professional team, and then you're talking about support groups and mastermind. Within there, you can create a very large number of people, but when you focus on the one to start off with, self-care, putting yourself as number one is not something we naturally do. I've always joked that I've been number 6 in my house for many years. Wife, 3 kids and a dog. Yeah. That's the way it works. But actually, when I put myself number one, then I'm fit for purpose for any calamity or challenge or opportunity that the rest of the family come up with. So if I'm not looking after myself mentally, physically, nutritionally, everything, then I'm not doing what I want to be capable of doing. And so my self-care has to be so important. But within that, though, I know the sports that I currently do versus the activities I should be doing versus the alcohol I should be drinking or shouldn't, or all the other things, that this balance. Now, within that world of self-care, we won't make changes for the sake of it. There has to be an emotional connection. This is the foundations of all coaching is behavioral change will not happen without an emotional connection. So if you want to try and make improvements, adjustments, then that's where we need to bring in other people that can help on those areas, because we don't have the skills ourselves. We're not good at asking those questions, the brutal ones that really put us on the spot, the things that a coach would say when they reflect that mirror on you and they know you're lying and you're trying to put a good spin on it, but you're never going to do it.
I obviously am a coach, scalability coach, but I have a coach, right? So I know the questions to ask, but I can't ask them of myself, really.
Yeah.
I need someone to do that for me. I'm not selling coaching, by the way, do it or don't do it, but you need somebody, I think, to ask those difficult questions, don't you, really, to help you. Like you say, it's the same as in an airliner. They always say, put your mask on first before you attend to those around you, because if you pass out, you're not much use to them, are you, really? So I think there's a lot of truth in what you've just said there, actually. That resonated quite a bit.
And it is working out what works for you. I mean, I'm not somebody who can sit and do meditation and mindfulness, because I can't sit still and my brain won't switch off. But you see this picture behind me. Mike, you'll recall this story. 5 years ago, along with a team of others, we were the fastest men's relay team to swim the English Channel, as you do.
Very impressive.
It's one of those things. It wasn't a solo; it was a relay. So mad, not stupid, or stupid, not mad. I can never remember which you did. But the reason why I share that story is one of the things I learned through all the training for the swimming and open water swimming that I still do today is I do active mindfulness. So when I get out of the water, having done activities, you go for a long walk or you go for a climb up a mountain, that's part mindfulness whilst you're doing it, because you get into that monotony and the reflection of everything going. And afterwards, your brain will be sharp, your heart rate will be calm, depending on how hard the activity was.
Not if I swam the channel, it wouldn't be.
Yeah, but I know you used to swim, so you could do part of it. But and that's that process. So it's knowing these things within sort of looking out for people in your team, and some of them, because of the way you're going, are great, but others, they're not so great because they're not going to bring you that added value. They're not going to ask the questions that need to be asked of you now.
Okay, so it's sort of almost being aspirational and being like, this is where I am and this is where I want to be. And person A, B, and C is going to encourage me. They're going to challenge me. They're going to push me in a safe way, and not in a dangerous sort of anxiety-inducing way, to get to that point, which I think is fantastic. But I've discovered a flaw. What if I have an aspiration and nobody in my current network is able to support me in it? So how can I be more intentional about getting people into my team?
Okay, this is the whole part of building the team. Yeah. So who do we need? what is the relevance and how does that work? So I've talked briefly on self-care, and I've mentioned the coach and whatever else, and the professional team. These are the ones who make sure you don't sign a piece of paper that you shouldn't. They'll read the 47 pages of terms and conditions because you never will, or that sort of thing. And it's knowing who are those people that have already got your back. So those are the ones. So if I turn to my wealth manager that I work with, and I ask him for a connection into this field or that field, whatever it is, because I need further support, a recommendation from him is so trusted and so specific that I'm going to act on it, and I'm going to have a conversation, and then it's just down to chemistry, whether or not I get on with Claire or Bob that he introduces me to. But because that level of connection is so strong, then those are the people you go to first, because they're in your inner sanctum. They're in this team already. I heard one of the Olympians in the summer talking about this golden inner circle that they created when they were sort of striving to get their medals, and it was that whole group of people. So when and even if that group is small to begin with, we're then asking those, okay, I'm trying to expand into Poland. I'm trying to take on new staff. I'm trying to have children. Whatever it happens to be, when you're talking with that inner sanctum of that close team around you, they will then start introducing you to other people.
All right.
That builds it. So it becomes that the reverse of a pay it forward. If you remember the book, Pay It Forward, you sort of do 3 good deeds for 3 complete strangers, but the rule is you have to pass it on. Well, it's the same in this environment. You're asking your 3 closest for who they recommend, and then you start getting passed on to other people that they totally recommend. And it's down to you to understand, okay, is this person fit for purpose? Are they going to help?
I think you're right. Just listening to you speak there, actually, I think that this ability to get what you want when you want it, and have the people to go to get it, let's put it that way, that first tier network, which, don't forget, of course, and I know in the book it talks about this, you've got to give as much as you take, right? This isn't exploitative. It's not, you're not taking from people and just amassing everything that they've got and then moving on to the next. You've got to do the same for them, haven't you? You've got to give and be there for them, or other people at least, else the universe is balanced, right? But this is really important, because I've got a number of people, like quite a few people, who I can turn to if and when I need something. So next week we've got a show, a webinar coming up, live webinar, and I need a piece of information for that, which is well outside my knowledge. It's to do with the law, and sent a quick message yesterday to someone. I've got a telephone call fixed tomorrow, 2:00 in the afternoon, 15 minutes, that will answer that question, right? Because the guy I went to is in that inner golden circle for me, and if I need anything in that area, I just naturally go to him and he helps me.
And if he didn't have the answer and he recommended you talking to Mildred, great name, then suddenly you would be already open door.
Another example of that,
trusting.
Just to reinforce that point, we want someone to come on this show to talk to us about share options, specifically that have had some experience in the recruitment field or services field. So I went to someone who I thought it would be, one of our clients, and he said, well, that's not for me, but I know somebody I think that can do that. Made the introduction, and we're just negotiating for dates now. So yeah, it's who was it that said it? It was Dan Sullivan that said, everything you want to earn is in the pockets of the people you know, or the pockets of the people they know. Yeah. And of course that is related to money, and you're talking more than just money, aren't you? But I think it's about that network of your network that we're talking about, which is probably enormous. You can get anything.
Gone are the days of 6 degrees of separation. It's 3 now.
Yeah.
I have no evidence of that. It's just my gut feel. It's 3. Yeah.
No, I think this is fascinating, because I think a lot of the time people, especially that, like, I'm in the middle of my career, let's put it that way. I'm not right at the beginning, straight out of uni, but I'm not about to retire. So sometimes, even though you speak to younger people, they think, but I don't know anybody. But being this really intentional, recognizing where there is not necessarily a weakness, but you aren't as far ahead in something as you want to be. Like you say, whether that is something in your personal life, like hobbies or to do with your family, or whether that is professional, to, if you want to start raising your profile and do public speaking, if you want to gain information on a specific area of the law, like Mike was talking about, you can then be intentional about, maybe at the moment your network isn't there, but you're getting to the point where you go, okay, I need to be there, but I recognize I could get this person who might know someone, and you start being more intentional with those people around you, because so often, especially professionally, people end up sort of building a network by mistake. They accept whoever they accept on LinkedIn and they go with it. But I love this idea of being intentional, because it's not about control, but it's about taking responsibility for your own future. And I think there's a power that you get in that, both mentally and physically, right?
The intentional word you're using there is so powerful, and it relies on one thing that we have to do, and that's be brave enough to ask for help. Mm-hmm. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's what makes us succeed. It's what opens doors. It creates opportunities. I tell a story about how I landed up in Western Australia. I moved out there a number of years ago, and I was introduced to a gentleman there who was best friends with somebody my dad was best friends with, who used to drink together in the cricket club in Singapore in the late 1950s. Yeah. As a result of that connection, this guy introduced me to a business that I then invested in and joined with commercial skills, and they bought me out 3 years later. Changed my life and direction, if I'm entirely honest. So my dad getting drunk in Singapore in the late 1950s changed my life in the noughties.
I've got drunk in Singapore myself, actually. So I never met anyone though, really. Mrs. Ames took me to bed shortly after. But it is, and I think you're right, the three degrees of separation. I think that's the way things go these days. But this is quite key. So people can go to peer groups, they can go to networking events, they can speak to people who know people. There's a million ways, isn't there, that people can actually get this support and get this knowledge and meet new people. The trick is getting out there and doing it, I suppose, isn't it?
And peer groups, mastermind support groups are one of the most powerful tools out there, because you're held to account by the other people in the room for the things you say you're going to do, and then vice versa, you're challenging the other people, and 7 minds all coming in at your opportunity or your problem or your issue is so powerful. And it's I talk a lot about it, but it's that when we build that team within a team, then I know individuals who have had a horrific cancer diagnosis, and they've gone back to their mastermind team to talk it through with them first before they went to their family, because they needed to know, they needed answers on how I should approach this, how I can do this in an emotionally sensitive area from practical support. And it helped hugely.
Nobody is as clever as everybody in the room,
Correct.
Bang on. Now, I mean, I've just recognized the time. I was really enjoying listening to you, Mike, and I've slightly lost track of the time. But so essentially, I'm going to come to you in a minute. I'm going to summarize now up, and I'm going to come to you in a second and come to you about the practical thing that somebody can do. But what we've spoken about essentially is mental wealth means not being alone. It means finding a group of people and being intentional about it who help and support you and are 100% on your team. And whether that means slightly challenging you, encouraging you, pushing you, it can be all sorts of things, but that's what they do. And the best thing to do is to go through who you've currently got, audit that network, list them from 1 to 10. And those 8, 9s and 10s are kind of the big ones that you take forward with you when you decide who you want in your network. And to do that, you recognize where you want to grow into and sort of areas that you want to develop in. And then finally, where there's gaps, where you don't have someone in your current network or a skill that you can't find from the people that you currently know, you're intentional about finding those people. You go to peer groups, you request things on LinkedIn, you talk to people, you talk to your original inner circle and get them to recommend people, and it grows, and suddenly you've got this great team that's all about mental wealth. So hopefully that summarized it up quite well. But Mike, what I want to ask you now is, somebody's reading this and they think, I want a team behind me that's going to encourage me, that's going to help me to grow, that's going to help me be vulnerable but in a safe space. What's the first thing that these people should do?
First thing that people need to do is understand who's got their back already. Yeah. And if they're feeling very isolated, very alone, then straight away, the key challenge here is to ask for help. The more we ask for help, and you've got people that you will trust. They may not be huge numbers on day one, but that's a baseline. This is about helping you build so that you, over the next 3 months, 3 years, whatever it is, you are asking for help and getting the right support, people challenging you. They're asking questions you won't ask yourself. And as a result of that, you're getting far more creative answers. And apparently you can have a lot more fun because you're feeling supported. You're not vulnerable. We're not worried and anxious about what can come out because you've already talked it through with your peer groups, with everybody else. So ask for help is absolutely number one.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. And I am also going to allow you a second thing to do, which would be, of course, to get your book, which Mike is going to hold up there for us now. And I'm going to put the link to the where you can get that book in the comments of this video. So if you want to look about Mike's book, please look in the comments below. So Father, I believe next week it's you're going to be gallivanting off running workshops with people. And so it's just going to be Pete and I doing the next Mike Ames Show. Is that correct?
It is, yes. I am doing a gig next week, so I won't be here. So you guys, I believe, according to Peter, are going to talk about the 3 rules of real networking. Now, I don't mean going to events and drinking warm Chardonnay and shaking hands and swapping business cards. That's not real networking. Real networking is kind of what Mike is talking about here. You're building this group of people that are on your side, and there are 3 rules, basic rules that you should follow, and he's going to talk about them with you. And I think it's really important if you're very interested in building a network. So that'll be next week.
So it should be good. And I do think it links quite well with what we spoke about today with Mike. So Mike, on behalf of me and Dads and everybody who's watching, thank you so much. It's been such an interesting show. I genuinely lost track of time because I was listening to you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. I'm glad to be of service.
It was fantastic.
And we'll see you next time. Take care.